I want to tell you the story of how I ended up climbing the three highest mountains on the North Island of New Zealand. But this wasn't something that I really planned, it somehow just happened.
So anyway, it all started just a few days after I arrived in Auckland to do my exchange semester in New Zealand. And a random group of people decided we should do a trip just before classes start. And since none of us really knew what to do, we just picked the most famous day hike in New Zealand, the Tongariro crossing. This is a 19-kilometer hike through steep volcanic landscapes, which was unlike anything I've ever seen before. And the path leads you past Mount Nauru. I probably pronounced it wrong, but anyway. It's also called Mount Doom because it was used in the Lord of the Rings trilogy to film the scenes where Frodo destroyed the ring. Now in real life this mountain is not quite as dangerous, but it's still 2,290 meters high and it's the third highest peak on the North Island. And going up there is not part of the 19-kilometer hike we planned to do that day anyway, but once we got to the bottom of Mount Doom, the majority of our group decided we should just go up and try to climb it. Now this wasn't as simple as just following a path. We had to get up a surface of loose rocks, volcanic ash and some big boulders. And it felt like going 2 steps up and 3 steps backwards. You had to move side to side. It was really hard. And we're running low on water already. And knowing that there was still at least 3 to 4 hours left on our actual hike to do, that wasn't very comforting either. So even though we as a group only met about a week ago, we still worked as a team, shared supplies, just pushed each other and to get to the top, which took about 2.5 hours of struggling. It was very exhausting. But once we got to the top, it was genuinely incredible. There was clouds beneath us covering the landscapes. And because this is a volcano, you're standing right to a massive hole, the crater, which was just crazy. And because it's a volcano and not like normal mountains like I'm used to, there aren't any tall peaks around you, so you truly get that kind of top of the world feeling, which is awesome. And then going downhill was actually really fun because you could just surf down the loose surface.
Okay, no more dancing, back to serious shit. Like we still need to get down this fucking thing.
But once we got down, we basically had no water, barely any supplies, and still about 10 kilometers left of our hike, so it was very exhausting. But it was one hell of a day, and that first beer afterwards tasted amazing.
So a couple weeks after that, we were planning another trip. And this time I suggested we should go to Mount Taranaki, because there's a small pond where if it's still, Mount Taranaki perfectly reflects in that pond, and I just really wanted to get that photo. But when I showed a picture I found online of that place to my mate David, he looked at me and literally said, "Dude, you don't want to climb that mountain?"
So we decided to hike up to the top of Mount Taranaki anyway, which is a sleeping volcano at 2,500 meters, making it the second highest peak on the North Island of New Zealand. And because you're starting the hike at around 900 meters high and it's a 6.3 kilometers track to the top, we knew we were in for a long day. But this time we brought better gear, we brought loads of water and supplies, and even though it was about the same difficulty as Mount Doom, we were definitely less stressed and we're all sort of in a better mood going up. And I can tell you it was an amazing day. There was barely any clouds in the sky, no wind, sunshine. It was just generally a great day. We were in such a good mood going up that once we came across a snowfield, we actually started a good old-fashioned snowball fight. But once we got to the top, it was a really bizarre feeling because this is a perfectly circular shaped volcano, 2,500 meters high, very close to the ocean, but no other mountains around you, so you're not looking at any other mountains close by, just fields and forests.
Being in so much higher of an altitude than anything you can see around you, it's just an incredible feeling. And we also had amazing visibility, so that helped as well.
So at that point, it seemed like we were kind of on a roll. So we planned our next big adventure just for the next weekend after. And this time, we wanted to climb the highest peak of the North Island, Mount Ruapeo, which is an active volcano that's 2,790 meters high. But this time we wanted to do it differently. We wanted to camp on the actual top of the mountain on the summit plateau. And the weather forecast wasn't ideal, but the night was forecasted to be clear. And so taking photos of the stars on an active volcano on the top of a really high mountain in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand just got me really, really excited. but we were not prepared for what that mountain would throw at us. Clouds moved in very soon after we started to hike, and wind started to pick up, it started to rain, and at one point the path ended, but we just had to keep going to get on top of a ridge that would lead us to the summit plateau where we were gonna camp. But once we got on that ridge, we realized that ridge actually protected us from a proper storm. The winds were so strong you had to get down on your hands, just keep moving, and at that point we realized we had to bail. There was no point. And since this was the end of April, we kind of thought that this was going to be the last opportunity we had to climb Mount Ruapehu, because in May, winter starts in New Zealand, snow starts to come in, and we thought that that mountain was nothing we could tackle in full winter conditions. So the dream we kind of built to climb all the highest mountains on the North Island of New Zealand, it just seemed dead. But as you can imagine, the story doesn't end there, and it's all great stories and stupid ideas. It all starts with us getting drunk. After our last exams in mid-June, we went out to celebrate, had 1 or 2 beers too many, but we decided, oh, let's just go on one last big hike before we all move out of our student accommodation and all go home to our home countries. And the next day, very hungover, we realized the only day the weather would allow us to do anything big was the day after that, so we had to get rental cars and accommodation sorted right away and just get going. Now here's where stupidity comes in, because we didn't research properly what this mountain would be like to hike in winter. 2 of us didn't have a lot of hiking experience in general, let alone ever use crampons and ice axes. We didn't research what the avalanche risk would be like or what the volcanic activity was at this point, so it was all the right ingredients for disaster. Lack of preparation and experience to do something most people would consider too dangerous to do. We had to rent a lot of the gear we needed to do this hike. We had to wait until the rental shops opened, so we couldn't get a really early start either, which isn't ideal when you're thinking of doing a very big day in winter and snow on literally the shortest day of the year. So, like I said, all right ingredients for disaster, but we were still very, very motivated to do it. And the weather was really kind to us again. No wind, sunshine, no clouds, visibility as good as it gets. It was just incredible. It was a really long, exhausting walk, but the ice was actually really solid frozen, which makes it really good to walk on with crampons instead of solid snow. So we had that going for us. Plus, an amazing scenery all the way up. But once we got to the top of the peak that we wanted to climb, the views were insane. We could see all over the summit plateau, which was just a world of ice. And there was a crater lake behind some really rugged mountains. It was an unbelievable experience, I can tell you. It was one of the best days I've ever had on a mountain, hands down. So once I was done shooting literally thousands of photos and videos, we had to make our way down. But we only had about 2.5 hours until sunset, and while it took us 5 hours to get to the top, we thought it was going to be really, really close. But here's where we made up for lack of preparation and gear, because we brought some Burger King trays which we stole at dinner the night before, and we brought them to the top of the mountain, and we used them as sleds to go down. And honestly, we went down that mountain at a speed which was insane. I would not stop laughing the whole way down. It was just hilarious. Oh yeah, and we weren't wearing helmets for that either, which we absolutely should have. It was kind of reckless. But we made it down safely and arrived at our car pretty much just at sunset, and this is how we actually finally managed to climb all the 3 highest mountains on the North Island of New Zealand. Although small disclaimer, the peak we climbed at Mount Ruapehu technically wasn't the highest one because it has a lot of different peaks, and the one we climbed isn't technically the highest one, but I'm gonna let it count anyway because the actual highest you need, that's a full alpine climb. You need proper winter climbing gear for that, and there's no way we're gonna survive that. So I'm gonna let it count.